This is Alan Turing. Alan Turing was a great mathematician and codebreaker. He explored many ideas, including developing what would one day become the basis for the modern computer and breaking the Germans' Enigma code. He also paved the way to creating artificial intelligence with his Turing test. In breaking Germany's Enigma code, Alan Turing exchanged vital information for the Allied war effort, thus greatly influencing the outcome of World War II. After World War I, many countries in Europe were paranoid over whether their secret business transactions were safe. Because of the growth of national commerce, many businesses and countries encountered the need to keep information safe from their competitors. This led Germany's Arthur Scherbius to develop the Enigma machine as a way to keep those transactions safe. This machine contained a keyboard, a lamp board, a plug board, rotors, and a cover for the key and lamp boards. The Enigma machine created an electrical current when a key was pressed, then sent it through a series of mechanical parts that scrambled the current, coming up with a different letter each time. This was the best code-making device in the world at this time. The Enigma machine was so complex that there were 158 quintillion, 962 quadrillion, 555 trillion, 217 billion, 826,360,000 different ways that the German naval Enigma machine could be said. Once World War II started, the Enigma machine soon became the main device that the Germans used to exchange messages to their Navy, Air Force, and Army. The Germans believed their code to be unbreakable, but the British and their allies tried to prove otherwise. To break the Germans' code and lessen the disadvantage the British were facing because of it, the British brought in a hand-picked group of mathematicians and cryptologists. They were challenged to break the Nazis' code, either mechanically or mathematically. These people were under great pressure to break this code. The center of this operation was Bletchley Park, a Victorian mansion in Buckinghamshire, England, 40 miles north of London. Station X, as it was called, became the most secret place in wartime Britain. As part of the cloak of secrecy, once the codebreakers left their jobs, they were ordered not to talk or even think about their jobs. These men and women were very vital to the Allied powers, but the most vital to the war effort was Alan Turing. Alan Turing, at age 27, was hired by the government code and cipher school at Bletchley Park. He got his education at both Princeton University and King's College at Cambridge, where he gained first-class honors in the field of mathematics. Turing was fascinated by science, mathematics, and artificial intelligence. All his life, he tried to invent a machine that would be as intelligent as a human. A computer would deserve to be called intelligent if it could deceive a human into believing that it was human, he wrote in 1950, defining his Turing test. Turing also explored the idea of a machine that could solve any problem that it was given. In the year 1936, at the age of 24, he developed the Turing machine, which was a primitive computer that would become the basis for the modern-day store-program computer. Once Alan arrived at Bletchley Park, he immediately began trying to find a way to break the German Enigma code. The other mathematicians before him came up with a trial-and-error way in which they would try to figure out the rotor settings for the day. They would receive a message from one of the wireless message intercepting stations located around the city. Then, they would try to figure out what rotor settings were being used for that day. This was a very time-consuming process and was only able to interpret the Enigma settings for one day. While the other mathematicians were struggling with this method, Alan was exploring the Enigma code's one fatal flaw. The only problem with the Enigma machine's method of creating code was that a letter could never become itself after passing through the rotors and plugboard. If there was a way to exploit this flaw, Alan Turing would find it.
At first, many mathematicians would use what were called cribs to decipher messages and find the rotor and plugboard settings for the day. A crib was a sample of plain text that a codebreaker would try to fit into the encrypted message. Alan thought that he could build a machine that would decipher the Enigma code almost instantaneously. He utilized the fact that a letter could never become itself. He designed his machine in a way that would allow it to decipher the Enigma code in just minutes. He called it the bomb. He used the same method that the mathematicians had used before, but since he was using a machine, it could make decisions much faster than a human. The bomb machine used its own set of cribs, called drums, to decipher the message in a matter of minutes. The drums were divided into 9 rows that were then split into 3 separate sections of drums. Each row had 12 drums in it, except for the middle row, which had 13. These drums had all 26 letters on them. It would spin around until they found a solution to the text that had been inputted into it. Once the first 3 rows were finished with going through all the letters, the second group of 3 kicked in. Then, once these were done, the third set kicked in until the machine had eliminated all the possibilities except for the correct one. 2 of Alan Turing's bomb machines were at Bletchley Park, each manned by 2 people. The jobs of these 4 people were to find a possible crypt to test and put it into the bomb to test it in the message. The machine would then run the message through all of its drums to find the correct rotor and plugboard setting. Once the group had found a possible rotor and plugboard setting, they ran it through a Type-X machine, which was pretty much an Enigma machine, to make sure that the settings were correct and that they came out as the right encrypted text. Sometimes, the rotor and plugboard settings were wrong, and then the operators would have to run a whole new crypt through the bomb. But the bomb was still the best and fastest code-breaking device at this time, and it was able to decode enough messages that the Allied powers could have a fairly accurate idea of what the Germans were doing at any given time. Alan Turing had broken the Enigma. In the first months of the bomb being built, over 30,000 Enigma messages were being deciphered each month, increasing to over 90,000 Enigma messages a month towards the end of the war. The disadvantages that the Allied powers encountered because of the Germans' code were all but erased. Now, the Allied powers could intercept messages, decode them, and then stop the bulk of the Germans' plans. However, the Allied powers did not want the Axis powers to know that their code had been cracked. Even though they intercepted and decoded a multitude of messages, the Allies could not allow the Germans to know that their code had been cracked. Therefore, a decision was made to not intercept all the U-boats or stop all of the ambushes. The Allies had to allow people to die to save many more in the end. This was a very difficult and sad decision, but it needed to be made in order to win the war overall. After World War II, Turing went back to working on his computers. In 1950, he developed the Turing test, a test that would determine if a robot was intelligent. This test has had a lasting impact on the field of computer science today in the search for artificial intelligence. In 1952, Turing and fellow colleague D.G. Champernoun developed a chess program for a computer. However, when they tried to use it, they encountered a problem. The computer they were using did not have enough power to run the program. Instead, Turing played a game against another one of his colleagues, Alec Glennie, in which he simulated the computer. With each turn taking up to half an hour, Turing's program finally lost to Glennie. Tragedy struck Turing at the age of 41 when on June 8, 1954, he was found dead by his housemate in his home laboratory. Preliminary reports stated that he had died the day before. The cause of death was cyanide poisoning. Initial police reports stated that a half-eaten apple was found near Turing. Although the apple was never tested for cyanide, the police believed the cyanide was ingested along with the apple. The government ruled it as suicide, but there are other possible theories. Turing's mother claimed it was because of her son's untidiness that caused him to accidentally consume the cyanide while moving other chemicals around. Andrew Hodges, a researcher fixated on Alan's life, said that he was perhaps reenacting his favorite scene from the movie Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs, in which the evil queen dips an apple in poison. Alan Turing accomplished many great things in his life, from exploring the idea and creating the basis for our modern computer, to breaking the Enigma code. His accomplishments have left a lasting impact on our world.